Hi everyone,
G'day.
and welcome to another Parkside Live. Enjoy your cup of tea if you want to grab a cuppa, get comfy. I think, our conversation, I found it quite challenging, encouraging this morning. So hopefully as we continue our conversation around the sound of rushing rain, it might encourage you too.
As we so often do, we're going to draw some inspiration from the scriptures here. So I'm going to read just a short extract from the first book of Kings, chapter 18. And way down in verse 41, it says this: Then Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, get something to eat and drink, for I hear a mighty rainstorm coming." I hear the sound of rushing rain, it says in other versions. And so Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel and bowed low to the ground and prayed with his face between his knees. And then he said to his servant, "Go and look out toward the sea." The servant went and looked and then returned to Elijah and said, "I did not see anything." So I want to share a story that I had the opportunity to be a part of. I was doing some youth work, and it was a volunteer organisation, and we were giving seminars actually. And it began with, there was a team of, there were 3 volunteers, and then there was a few other people who were just kind of watching to see how it went really. And I can remember standing in this auditorium with about 150 students, and the teachers all walked out.
Yep.
And if you are not too long out of school, perhaps you can remember that when that happens, that's a cue for pandemonium. And there we were, and there were these 2 other volunteers, and they were down the front trying to project some kind of connection, some kind of influence over this crowd that was in pandemonium. I was trying to be a bit more direct and just say, "Oh, shush," but it wasn't really working. And it was pandemonium. I can remember thinking, what are we doing here? How is this going to benefit anyone? Because it just started in pandemonium, and certainly on that day we did not see any results. And I want to that's a great setting for where we begin tonight. You may find yourself right now in the middle of a situation where something has begun, but you're not seeing any indication of results. You're hoping for some kind of result, you're working towards some kind of result, you're putting effort towards getting an outcome, but you're simply not seeing it. Perhaps you can think of an example. Have you got an example like that you've experienced?
I don't know. I think there can be lots of different ones. I mean, with kids, like even as a mum, there are things that you want to see, and you're just like, are we ever going to get to the other side of maybe this season? Or, when kids are really little, are we ever going to sleep through the night? Are we ever going to have a family? Or is it ever going to happen? I can't see that I'm ever going to get sleep again. Like there have been those kind of moments, and it looks like, things are never going to happen.
Yeah. And I think we can find ourselves in a relationship where we feel like we are investing a lot of energy, we're putting a lot of time into the relationship, it just does not seem to be working. We can be in an employment opportunity, and you've got your aspirations for certain things that you want to achieve, and there's just not any fruit coming there. You can be investing yourself in a cause, and you're wanting to see public opinion change, perhaps you're wanting to see rulings change, and you're pouring out time and effort, and you are not seeing any change. I think that's a pretty common experience in our lives. And what we see here, drawing on this story, we met 2 characters, and the character that we really want to focus on is this character named Elijah. And he only emerges relatively late in the picture. And what we see is actually the first record of him is he announces a drought. He says, we are not going to see rain for a long time. And that drought is so bad that he has to actually run off into the bush, as we would call it here, the wilderness, other people might call it, you might even call it the desert, and he subsists by drinking water from a creek, and then getting fed scraps by scavenger birds, which is a pretty incredible story. And the drought is so bad that this character Elijah actually then has to leave because the creek dries up. And he goes to another place and actually asks someone else who's pretty much got nothing for food, and he gets fed, and then there's a whole other story there. But why is this drought announced? Can you give us the 30-second version there?
In this instance, it's a drought because people are not following God. Is that the kind of gist?
Pretty much. I mean, there's the second character here is a ruler called Ahab, and he has the particular reputation that when they record the rule of kings, some kings will be described as this king did what was pleasing in the eyes of God, or this queen did what was pleasing in the eyes of God. Some will be recorded as this king or this queen did what was evil in the sight of God, and yet this particular king is recorded as being more evil than any king in his time. And it goes on to say that there were theological things. This king was accused of worshipping other gods. There's some speculation that this king may have even been involved in child sacrifice, that he went after the gods of other nations, which at this particular point in time was not only disloyal to God, but actually then disloyal to the heartbeat of that nation. That country in this time felt that they were the chosen nation of God, and he walked away from that. And so in response to this king's behaviour, he was warned, but he set out to silence every voice in opposition to him. And some of you may be finding this eerily familiar, that you have a government that sees itself as appointed by some divine power and then sets out on a campaign to silence by one means or another every voice that stands against it. And when that happens, that is evil times. When you are in the workplace and that workplace just seems to disregard all external feedback and says, we're doing it this way, we don't care about standards, we don't care about safety, and then seeks to systematically silence the voices that are against it, you know that that is a workplace that we would describe as toxic. And there are moments that we might have to endure that, but there are also moments when that calls us to do something else. And so it's in the middle of this oppressive and this toxic situation that our first character here stands up. And he's actually then not told to just run away, but he's actually called out of his hiding and said, no, you need to speak to power in this situation. That's always, I think, a terrifying thing, when you have to speak to power. It can feel like my voice won't matter, they're not going to listen to me.
Or I'm just scared that, I open my mouth and they chop my head off.
They chop my head off.
Put me in jail, whatever.
Lose my job, lose my position of influence. We live in a country right now where the gambling lobby has huge influence. And there's a particular senator in Australia who has taken a stand against that influence. And he has been excluded from social gatherings because of his stand. And yet, he speaks up into this oppressive segment of business. He speaks against it. And even as we're talking about this, you may be aware of a toxic environment that you find yourself in. You may be aware of oppression that you are aware of. And that may be directed towards you. You may observe it directed towards other people. But as we pause here, we've already seen that this God is a God who invites people to speak. And this moment in time, I wonder what is it that you are being invited to speak into right now? What is that situation that you are being asked to speak up against oppression, where you are being asked to speak against toxic practices? Because that's scary.
Yeah.
And in this particular example, we've got an example here of someone who is just one voice among many voices that were silenced, executed, hunted down and executed. And yet what we see here is this one person who becomes aware this is something that I have to do. And I think regardless of what we believe, we can agree that speaking against oppression, that trying to bring health to toxic places is a good thing. And yet, if we are looking at this God that we claim to follow, we see that this is a God who provides shelter, as it did for this character Elijah, but then also calls us out of shelter and safety to speak up. That is real risk. We're aware that some people who are watching this, for you, that is a life and death risk. That for others, it is an income risk. Yeah. And for others, it is a mental risk. What will people think of me? And yet, faith invites us to go beyond ourselves. And when we look at this person, he took a stand. He took a stand, and there was a mass group of people speaking against him, saying, what you're thinking is rubbish. And so it was a stand against public opinion at that time. And yet, as we read down this story, we come to that few sentences that we read at the start, where this character speaks again to the king and says, I told you it was not going to rain, and now I'm telling you it is going to rain. And we picked it up there. He sent his employee out there, look at the horizon, see what's happening. And what did the employee say?
I see nothing.
Now, if you had said rain is coming and that was the feedback, how would you feel about that?
You go, oh, maybe I'm wrong.
It's a pretty human response, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe I misheard, maybe I got it wrong.
Yeah.
And yet what we see here is not doubt.
No.
It may have been internal doubt, we don't see it, not anxiety, not do I think God really said that? But he says, go again. And as we read here, he sends this guy out 7 times. What did you see? Nothing. Go again. What did you see? Nothing. What did you see? Nothing. Like after about 3, I think I'd be going, I might have got it wrong. And yet we see patience and persistence. Go again. I'm not giving up on what I believe.
Yeah, but also it's that bit beforehand where it's like, not even go and see. He's like, I've already heard what I can't see yet. You know, that anticipation of trusting that God is at work and that God is going to do what he said he will do, even when all around it looks like that's not going to happen.
And it's not just a private persistence.
Yeah.
It is public.
Yeah.
He has engaged with the government and said, you need to go because something's going to happen. And he persists, and then based on the sound of the rushing wind, he sends this guy out and he keeps praying. Like you see here, he's praying.
Yeah.
And he goes, what do you see now? And then finally, the feedback that he gets is there is a small cloud the size of a fist on the horizon. Yeah. And his response here is run. It is going to rain.
Yeah.
And I think, as we tell this story, like I'm inspired even hearing it, you know, speaking into a situation, justice and oppression, being the rainmaker. Right? And yet what we see here is, as the story goes on, this guy has a nervous breakdown, just runs away and needs to recover. Yeah. And so we see that this practice of persistence, there is a cost. It is hard. But God says, I am with you. I will act. And as you're exploring this path of faith right now, as you're tuning in, I think the same God who created the universe, this same God who said, I'm going to stop the rain, this same God who says, I'm now sending the rain, this same God who says, I want you to speak up, is saying, I want you to speak up. We know that because this same God, when he saw the chaos of the world, did not hold himself back, but stepped into the world. That when he saw the oppression in the world, did not say, it doesn't affect me, but actually stood with those who were being oppressed and said that when an oppressor tells you to pick up their equipment and carry it 1 mile, carry it twice as far. Step into it. And we see a God who actually endured not only oppression himself, but we see a God who was actually killed. They took life from the one who gives life because he spoke and said, this is not the way, that there is another way, that there is something new coming. That is the invitation of our faith, to speak against oppression, to speak up against injustice, not only to persist and persevere for a cause that benefits me, but actually that faith is most clearly demonstrated when it is done for someone who is not involved, when you take an action in order to benefit some other young people. Those chaotic seminars that those 2 volunteers initiated saw the lives of hundreds of students touched. Comfort was given to those who were experiencing pain. There was a sense of connection and belonging that was given to students who were lonely and searching for connection. There was opportunity and training given to those who felt that they wanted to give back, because these 2 volunteers stepped into the chaos of that moment. Not for them. There was stress, there was conflict, there was income given up. But for the benefit of those students, something happened. We want to invite you to be a rainmaker. It's a groovy title, but as we've seen here, the experience and the pathway there is difficult and challenging. But it begins by saying yes. And if you want to take a step of faith and say yes to the Creator, to say yes to Jesus, to say, I will speak, even though I might feel like I'm speaking alone. I will speak even though there is risk. Then we're just going to offer a simple prayer to do that, a prayer that we often pray, and that is simply to say, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my fears. I give you my doubts. Give me your life. Give me the ability to speak against oppression, to stand up against injustice, and to follow your path. It's a simple prayer, but it begins a process, the first step in a process. And so if that's a process that you're ready to begin, then we want to invite you right now to pray with us. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. If you prayed that prayer, we would love to support you on the next step in that process, whatever that may be for you. Please drop us a comment or send us a DM, and we'd love to support you in any way you can. We can. And if you're coming through Southwest Sydney, we'd love you to join us with other friends around this table. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
Bye.